After Charlie Kirk's death, Jimmy Kimmel misled his viewers by telling them, based on nothing and in direct contradiction of all available evidence, that Charlie was murdered by one of his own political allies.
We hit some new lows over the weekend with the MAGA gang desperately trying to characterize this kid who murdered Charlie Kirk as anything other than one of them and doing everything they can to score political points from it. In between the finger pointing, there was grieving. On Friday, the White House flew the flags at half-staff, which got some criticism. But on a human level, you can see how hard the president is taking this.
My condolences on the loss of your friend Charlie Kirk. May I ask, sir, personally, how are you holding up over the last day and a half, sir?
I think very good. And by the way, right there, you see all the trucks? They've just started construction of the new ballroom for the White House, which is something they've been trying to get, as you know, for about 150 years. And it's going to be a beauty.
Yes. He's at the fourth stage of grief, construction. Demolition, construction. This is not how an adult grieves the murder of someone he called a friend. This is how a 4-year-old mourns.
Ha 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 ha. You get it? Charlie Kirk was assassinated for having open debate, and that is is that funny? It's fun. Trump's reaction is funny. Anyway, the weak punchline is not really the problem here. The problem is that first part. When he says, those right-wingers, they were spinning so hard to pretend like Charlie was assassinated by anyone who wasn't one of their own. The shooter engraved far left-wing messages on the bullets that he used to kill Charlie Kirk. And then he confessed, allegedly, everything that he did to his trans furry boyfriend. Don't think he was a Burkean conservative. It was a lie. It was a lie that Jimmy told his audience. That was a few days ago. As of last night, Jimmy Kimmel doesn't have a job. This is a great move by ABC, and it follows many other very wise personnel decisions by major corporations this week in response to the many employees across the country who have minimized and even in some cases celebrated the assassination of a young man who only ever tried to talk it out. If the message was not clear already, it should be clear as day to everyone on the left by now. We have had enough, and the consequences will continue until behavior improves. I'm Michael Knowles. This is The Michael Knowles Show. Welcome back to the show. Ilhan Omar has just made the claim that Somalia is preferable to America, just to show you a little bit about our national confusion on other topics, even beyond the recent tragic events. We will get to that momentarily. First, though, I want to tell you about Kickoff. Right now, go to getkickoff.com/Knowles. Did you know that roughly 36% of Americans have below average credit scores, which can make borrowing more difficult and expensive? That is where Kickoff can help. Users with credit under 600 grew an average of 84 points in their first year with on-time payments. You can start building your credit right away for just $1 in your first month. Best part is that AutoPay takes care of everything automatically, so you're building credit even while you sleep without ever having to worry about missing a payment. The whole sign-up process only takes a few minutes right from your phone. There's no credit check required. You can cancel whenever you want. No wonder it is the #1 credit builder on the App Store. Really important to have good credit, obviously, when you want to get a car, when you want to get a house, when you want to exist in the modern economy. So start building credit with Kickoff today, and you can get your first month for as little as $1. That's 80% off the normal price when you go to getkickoff.com/Knowles, K-N-O-W-L-E-S. That's Kickoff with a K, K-I-K, without the C, no C's. Go to getkickoff.com/Knowles. Must sign up via kickoff.com/Knowles to activate offer. Offer applies to new kickoff customers first month only. Subject to approval. Offer subject to change. Average first-year credit score impact of plus 84 points. Vantage score 3.0 between January 2023 and January 2024 for kickoff credit account users who started with a score below 600, who paid on time, who had no delinquencies or collections added to their credit profile during that period. Late payments may negatively impact your credit score. Individual results may vary. Jimmy Kimmel was not fired merely for a bad joke. Jimmy Kimmel was not fired merely because of pressure from the federal government, as some people are saying. And Jimmy Kimmel's firing is a good thing. But let's just take each of those steps. Jimmy Kimmel hasn't even permanently been fired yet. He's been indefinitely suspended by ABC. ABC made that decision. If you had an employee who mocked the assassination of a political debater merely for stating his opinion and hearing out the other side, if you ran any corporation anywhere in the country and you had an employee who did that, it would be the right thing to do to fire that employee. For all of the reasons that we've been discussing all week. Because that would be an example of the thought that stops thought. That would be the kind of thing that would obstruct the operation of your business, because you'd have all of your other employees sitting next to this person in the cubicle wondering if that person were taking the steps to murder them. He would openly celebrate their murder. He would encourage their murder. You can't run a corporation that way. You can't run a hospital in which the nurses are credibly suspected of trying to kill the patients. You can't run a restaurant if the customers think that the servers and the kitchen staff are trying to poison them. It doesn't work. You can't have a country with open debate and the free exchange of ideas when some people in that marketplace of ideas are actively trying to murder the other people. That doesn't expand the marketplace of ideas. That actually restricts it. It undermines the whole thing. So if you ran any other company, you would be wise to fire Jimmy Kimmel just for that. But that's not why Jimmy Kimmel was fired. Jimmy Kimmel was fired for advancing a lie in contravention of all available evidence immediately after a major national trauma and tragedy. And he was not fired because of government pressure. He was fired because of the wise decision of ABC, though that was done in concert with federal regulators looking into the misdeed that Jimmy Kimmel committed. Here we have Brendan Carr, the chairman of the FCC, speaking on Benny Johnson's show.
But frankly, when you see stuff like this, I mean, look, we can do this the easy way or the hard way. These companies can find ways to change conduct, to take action, frankly, on Kimmel. Or, there's going to be additional work for the FCC. Again, there's actions that we can take on licensed broadcasters. And frankly, I think that it's really sort of past time that a lot of these licensed broadcasters themselves push back on Comcast and Disney and say, listen, we are going to preempt. We are not going to run Kimmel anymore until you straighten this out, because we licensed broadcaster, are running the possibility of fines or license revocations from the FCC if we continue to run content that ends up being a pattern of news distortion.
Great point. And here you're going to lose some libertarians, and here you're going to lose some squishy types, but you shouldn't. Because what they're going to say is, well, ABC News is a private corporation, and ABC News should have the right to let its comedians go on TV and lie and make jokes in poor taste. And forget the joke for a second. The joke in poor taste is a little bit of a red herring. It's the lies that we're talking about here, because these news networks are not merely private corporations. These news networks are licensed broadcasters. They require licenses from the government. They have a purpose, which is, in the case of news, to tell the truth, to inform the public. That's why the government supports them in their mission. When those news broadcasters are contradicting the truth, obscuring the truth, undermining the truth, the government has not only a right, but a responsibility to hold them to account. They only exist, they only receive their licenses to inform the public. An honest mistake here or there, okay, that's understandable. But to go out after a clear political assassination by a very, very clear assassin, and to flip the story on its head, to tell the opposite of the truth, merely to score political points or to pander to your left-wing political base, that is unacceptable. And so Brendan Carr says we can do this the easy way or the hard way. And ABC chose the easy way, it seems, and indefinitely suspended Kimmel. But what's the hard way? Pace, libertarians and squishes. The hard way is not, Mussolini showing in and beating his enemies into submission with a billy club. The hard way is regulating these industries as they are intended to be regulated. The hard way is the government simply doing its basic job. Explain to me, if this is out of line, what the FCC exists for in the first place. Explain to me what a licensed news network is. You would not be able to. Brian Stelter, the former CNN journalist, I don't know who he's working for now, if anyone. He's another one who felt the consequences of his bad work. He tweeted out, he says, I asked FCC Chair Brendan Carr if he had any new comment now that ABC has pulled Jimmy Kimmel's show, and he sent me this GIF, and it's The Office doing the raise the roof symbol. That's a beautiful response. The consequences will continue until behavior improves. This national trauma, not merely the assassination of Charlie Kirk, actually more so the reaction to the assassination of Charlie Kirk from people in elite media, from professionals, from educators, from government officials in some cases. The reaction to Charlie's murder, the minimization of it, and in some cases the celebration of it, marks, pardon the phrase, a turning point. That's the second national trauma on top of the first one, watching this emblem of civil debate be murdered on stage for stating his opinions. It's that second national trauma that has impelled, I think, some of the reaction here. Because it's a recognition by half the country that the other half, large numbers of people, including normal people in the other half, want to murder us. And we cannot have a country that way. We cannot have an open marketplace of ideas that way. We can't do anything that way. We want to have flourishing. We want to have open, healthy discussion. In order to achieve that under these conditions, we must reestablish order. Liberty requires order. And order, in this case, means suppressing the people who are undermining the whole system. For example, the kind of people who celebrate the murder of an innocent man. The rejoinder to this that you're going to hear from some libertarians and some squishes is that we should have let the free market do its work. Jimmy Kimmel's ratings were suffering anyway. He was talentless. His show has been unbearable for years. And so his ratings were going to drop and he was going to be fired eventually anyway. So why immanentize the eschaton here? Why would we make him a political martyr when he was going to go away anyway? I believe that point of view, I understand it. I've heard it. I've probably felt it at times myself. I think that point of view makes the same laissez-faire error that is made by the people who oppose the firings, generally, of those who celebrate murder. It's this laissez-faire error that doesn't merely appreciate the efficiency of free markets, for instance, that doesn't merely appreciate the truth that can come about as a matter of open debate, but that actually makes an idol out of those things, that makes an idol out of the so-called invisible hand, the invisible hand of the free market, which is really just providence for atheists. I think it makes that error because we've tried that for decades. We on the right have tried that. The left comes into power, wields power in a heavy-handed and unjust way, and then we respond by winning elections and not wielding power at all, in neither a just nor an unjust way. We just don't wield power at all because what we say following this argument is, well, we don't want to do anything because if we do something, that will set the precedent for Democrats to do something against us in the future. And heaven forfend, we have that. We are not going to address current real social problems and injustices because of some hypothetical injustice that might occur in the future that is actually already occurring now from the other side against us. I think it's very, very weak. I see no evidence that no matter how low the ratings got, ABC was going to cancel Jimmy Kimmel anytime soon. And I see a lot of evidence that the lies, the fraud, the deceit that is being perpetuated by these people. Not to say the wrath that is ginned up by those who celebrate the murder of Charlie Kirk, the immense damage done to the so-called free marketplace of ideas by the mere celebration of murder like this. I see real problems occurring right now. And we need to do something to stop those in accordance with justice and in the advance of the common good. You have to do something about that. Your invisible hand, your providence for atheists, is not always going to save you. That's magical thinking with very, very little evidence. We have to have the moral courage to do stuff. And conservatives have not had, it's not that conservatives have always lacked a moral vision. Sometimes they have a moral vision. What they lack is courage. What they lack is resolve. What they lack is fortitude, which is the prerequisite of all the other virtues. Kimmel's indefinitely suspended. That's a good start. We will keep this up. We have had enough. We have seen enough. We have had enough. We will keep this up in a circumscribed, just, prudent way in advance of the common good. We will keep this up until the behavior improves. Simple as. Speaking of good stuff, I strongly encourage you to check out Preborn. Go to preborn.com/Michael. If you care about life, about moms in crisis, about the babies that they're carrying, then this is for you. Because I know sometimes we want to help. We want to pray. We just don't always know how. That is why I want to share something that has really moved me. It's called Heartbeat of Prayer from Preborn. It's a 30-day devotional that walks you through real stories, women facing the hardest decision of their lives and how God met them there. Every day you will read a true story, reflect on scripture, and be guided in prayer. It's simple. It's beautiful. It helps you stand in the gap for moms and their babies right from wherever you are. So, if your heart has been stirred, maybe this is your next step. You can get your free copy of Heartbeat of Prayer right now at preborn.com/Michael, Michael. That is preborn.com/Michael, Michael. It's free. It's powerful. It's one way you can be part of something that truly matters right now. I really support Preborn. I personally support it. I think it's a wonderful organization. Go to preborn.com/Michael. Another great example of President Trump hearing this message, understanding the moment, and restoring order, the order without which liberty is not possible. President Trump has just posted to Truth Social that he will be categorizing Antifa as a major terrorist organization. Now, I want to get his words exactly right because this is a little bit confusing. He says, I am pleased to inform our many USA patriots that I am designating Antifa, all caps, a sick, dangerous, radical left disaster as a major terrorist organization. I will also be strongly recommending that those funding Antifa be thoroughly investigated in accordance with the highest legal standards and practices. Thank you for your attention to this matter. I was just speaking to my father yesterday. We're catching up on everything. And I mentioned this. I said, something concrete that I really hope comes out of this is that the federal government actually moves in to dismantle left-wing terror organizations, the most notable being Antifa. I said, because it's the same problem as the people who think that the shooter was a Republican. It's the same problem as the people who listen to the Jimmy Kimmels and the news networks and they believe lies. People think that Antifa doesn't exist. I can promise you Antifa exists. Antifa has tried to blow me up before. There's a person in federal prison right now because he worked with Antifa to try to blow me up on a college campus. Other such cases. I'm surprised he is in prison because often left-wing violence goes unrecognized and left-wing terrorists go unpunished. This is real. Antifa stands for anti-fascist. It's a collective of anarchists and communists. They meet in bookshops. They build bombs. In fact, the Antifa operative who's in federal prison for trying to attack me was caught multiple times with explosive material on him going through TSA and allowed to board the plane anyway. We're not talking about some nerds who read Das Kapital and talk about how much they love Herbert Marcuse or something. We're talking about terrorists, people who train and build bombs to murder conservatives and who sometimes succeed. They are an organization. Now, they're anarchists, so it's not the most tightly run organization, but it is organized. It is recognizable as a group with a collective identity. and it needs to be dismantled, and its members need to be ruthlessly prosecuted and suppressed. They are profoundly antisocial elements. They threaten the entire country. They are, as President Trump says, terrorists. There's a problem, though, which is that when we're talking about foreign terrorists like Al-Qaeda or Tren de Aragua, for that matter, we can bring the full weight of U.S. military might to bear to suppress them. That is not true for domestic terrorists. That is not true for domestic organized crime generally. You don't send in the 101st Airborne to take down the mafia or to take down the Ku Klux Klan or to take down Antifa. That said, we have taken down the mafia and we have taken down the Ku Klux Klan and we have taken down other terror groups. The way you have to do it is a little bit different, though. So President Trump here points to one way that it can happen, which is these guys do get money. They get money through various NGOs, trickled down from various extremely wealthy left-wing investors. The sources of the money need to be investigated. And where appropriate, they need to be punished. Furthermore, you could bring a RICO charge. There's a prospect of racketeering charges against these left-wing groups. That's the way that the government took down the mob. Furthermore, you could revoke the tax-exempt status of the liberal nonprofits and NGOs that fund these groups. That's one way to take them down. Furthermore, you could put informants into these groups and bring conspiracy charges against these people when they plan attacks on conservatives. That's how they took down the KKK. There are many mechanisms available to the government to take these people down. I am extraordinarily gratified to see that the Trump administration is taking this seriously. How much more do we need to see? When it was just Antifa showing up and making a ruckus outside of conservative speaker events on campus 10 years ago, I guess people looked the other way. When it was just Antifa burning people in effigy on the streets or defacing monuments, or maybe occasionally punching some conservative, shoving some conservative, shutting down some conservative event, I guess people look the other way. Left-wing ideologues have assassinated the most prominent emblem of civil debate on the right. Something fundamentally has changed. Add on top of that the large-scale support for political violence from the left against the right, reflected not only in the media, not only on social media, but also in the public opinion polls we've seen, for example, from YouGov in recent days. Something fundamentally has to change. The laissez-faire approach, the idol of the invisible hand of the free market working everything out, that false ideology, which has always been false but is now manifestly false, that has been proven to be a god that has failed. And we must once again return to the actual American political tradition, which is self-government in defense of the unalienable rights with which we are endowed by our Creator through representative government that really can wield power. We have not only individual rights, but the political right to have a country in which the defense of natural rights is possible and in which flourishing is possible as well. That's what Trump is getting. That's what we're seeing. It's a beautiful, beautiful thing. Some Republicans don't quite get this vision. We'll get to that in one moment. First, though, I want to tell you about one of my absolute favorite products, Rabbit Air. Go to rabbitair.com. Have you heard about Rabbit Air's A3 purifier? This is one of my absolute favorite products on the market in any category. I love this air purifier. These guys have won awards for their design. The design is beautiful. They've won awards for their functional design. It uses 6 stages of filtration to clean your air. Doesn't just pretend to clean the air around you. It actually has advanced deodorization, which traps micron-sized particles like PM 2.5 VOCs and cigar odors, so your home feels genuinely fresh. I've used the A3 in my studio, smoking cigars. I have used the A3 in my office. I have used the A3. I now have the A3 at home. I have 2 A3s at home. I really, really love this. It can handle everything from toddlers and garlic and like regular household smells all the way to cigars. If you are a cigar smoker in particular, go check them out. But even if you're just a regular person, a normie, a civilian, you got to go get it. It is a phenomenal air filter. RabbitAir.com. Call them anytime. Their consultants are available 24/7 to answer the questions you have. RabbitAir.com. Figure out what works best for enhancing your space. A couple days ago, the Republicans voted to get tougher on crime in Washington, D.C. Washington, D.C. is the federal district. It is under the control of Congress, ultimately, and the Congress voted on a bill to get tough on crime in D.C. Now, what do we mean by tough on crime? This isn't exactly Franco's Spain here, okay? We're not talking about Xi Jinping's prison camps. We're talking about a bill that would, for instance, require people who are ages 18 to 24 and commit crimes to be charged as adults. You're probably scratching your heads. I probably have to say that again. The bill would simply require adults ages 18 to 24 when they commit crimes to be charged as adults. Now you're probably saying, well, what's happening now? What's happening now is that in Washington, D.C., some gangster can go rape a woman, steal a car, and murder an entire family. And if he's 24 years old, he could be charged as a minor in principle, because 18 to 24-year-olds can be charged as minors. Does that make sense? Is a 24-year-old a minor? Is a 24-year-old a child? I don't think so. So this bill would do that. Slightly more controversially, the bill would lower the age at which someone can be charged as an adult for first-degree murder, sexual assault, armed robbery, or assault to, in some cases, 14. Now, some people might say, well, 14-year-olds, they're so young. Well, the problem is when you look at rates of crime in D.C., teenagers as young as 14, and specifically black teenagers, are committing these very, very serious crimes at very, very high rates. And if they're merely charged as minors, you can't do anything about the problem. It's a terribly unfortunate situation, but there are two paths forward, two options. You can either ignore the problem and allow more people to be raped and assaulted and robbed and murdered in the hopes that the invisible hand of the free market or something will fix that problem in the end, eventually, through, I don't know, cultural changes or increased standards of living or something. Or you can get a little tougher on crime. What do you think? What do you think is going to help fix the problem? Look the other way, bury your head in the sand and hope for the best, or use the police to arrest the criminals and hold them to greater accountability? It's obviously the latter. That's all this bill does. Every Republican in Congress voted to advance this. There were two exceptions. One didn't vote. One voted no. Who voted no? The ever-principled Thomas Massie. Thomas Massie. Thomas Massie, probably the chief political enemy of Donald Trump within the Republican Party these days. But Thomas Massie, who has in recent months really opposed Trump, supposedly on principled grounds. I have nothing against Thomas Massie personally. Thomas Massie is wrong here. And his defenders are going to say, well, he's so principled. He's a principled libertarian. And so I guess his principled libertarian argument is that you shouldn't try teenagers as adults. You should, if you want to prosecute them, you should increase the penalties for teenagers. Or I don't know. He hasn't spoken at length on this. But let's just say that his views are principled. I'm willing to admit that. Or I'm not willing to admit that. I'm willing to entertain that possibility. I think a lot of Massie's behavior is driven by the fact that Trump is his political enemy and he wants to gun after him before he's thrown out of office. But let's just say I'm willing to give him the benefit of the doubt. I got nothing against the guy personally. Let's say that this vote came from his principles. In that case, the problem is that his principles are wrong. You can be very, very principled and wrong. Having principles and $1.50 will get you a cup of coffee if your principles are useless. And unfortunately, we've seen this with a handful of other members of Congress and even of the Senate. They're so concerned with appearing politically pure that they never do anything. They never do anything to advance the cause of good. And sometimes they side with the bad guys to undermine good and advance evil based on principles. That's not a good principle, because the chief political principle is prudence. That's the paramount political virtue. Not at the exclusion of justice and courage, and temperance, and all the other stuff. But in this case, if your principles are leading you to vote against a bill to get a little tougher on crime in D.C., which has descended into third world chaos, I think you ought to rethink your principles. But then I don't share those principles because I'm not a libertarian. Speaking of principles, the Holy Father, Pope Leo XIV, has just come out swinging against wealth inequality. Now, you know, the terms left and right are relatively modern terms compared to the history of the church. The church is 2,000 years old. The terms left and right in politics are 230 years old. It comes from the French Revolution. The atheists and the libs sat on the left side of the National Assembly. The monarchists and the Christians sat on the right side. So sometimes popes seem like they're a little bit on the left. Sometimes they seem like they're on the right. Even Pope Francis, who was notably more liberal than many of his predecessors. On the one hand, he would talk about climate change, and then in the next breath, he would say that gay marriage is a machination of the father of lies that seeks to deceive and confuse the children of God. On the one hand, he would promote mass migration. On the other hand, he would say that transgenderism is a lie and that abortion is like hiring a hitman. So the politics don't map neatly. But in this case, especially with Pope Leo XIV appearing much more traditional, much more like a normal pope, I'm really gratified by the early days of his pontificate, and I'm really excited about it. But there are going to be some people who say, okay, well, here comes the left-wing stuff. Here's the Pope complaining about wealth inequality. Here we go. I can't wait for President Trump and the American conservatives to shoot that nonsense down. What does President Trump have to say?
Leo the other day in an interview criticized the fact that some CEOs make hundreds of times more in salary than average workers. He's worried about polarization. Yeah. Do you share that concern?
Well, I do say there's a big gap. I do say that. Don't forget, I'm a popularist. There is a big gap.
Mr. President.
What? No, hold on. Trump is the Republican president. He's a conservative. He's a billionaire on top of that. He's supposed to smack down the Pope for bringing up a problem brought about by wealth inequality. He's supposed to own him with facts and logic. The Pope comes out, his direct words were, yesterday the news said that Elon Musk is going to be the first trillionaire in the world. What does that mean and what's that about? If that is the only thing that has value anymore, then we're in big trouble. It says there's a problem if what we primarily value is money, if that's all that we value, and if you have this massive inequality. Trump, you say you agree? Yes, of course. Of course. And why? He says, because I'm a popularist. I love that. I like that change. Not just a populist. He's a popularist. It's true. He's very popular too. But this is right. He's right. And the Holy Father makes a good point. Because we like free markets. Pope John Paul II said this in Centesimus Annus, which is an encyclical to celebrate 100 years of Rerum Novarum, which was an encyclical by Pope Leo XIII, from whom Pope Leo XIV took his name. And in it, the popes criticized socialism immensely, criticized communism. In Centesimus Annus, Pope John Paul II says that free markets are the most efficient way to allocate goods and services around an economy. Certainly true. But we are not merely a political order and political community serving an economy. We're not making an idol out of this thing. We like the forces that move about in market economies, generally speaking, but we don't serve them. We don't make an idol out of the invisible hand. We don't make an idol out of the market. We don't flip our society on its head to say that we are not merely citizens who benefit from markets, but rather we are slaves to the all-knowing, all-powerful free market. No. Can't be doing that. And Pope Leo is pointing out there are corrosive effects to massive wealth inequality. To the individual accruing massive wealth, divorced from the political community because it makes us avaricious, avarice being the beginning of ills in the city forever. And it makes us consider ourselves simply as individuals with private interest rather than as social creatures in pursuit of the common good, who benefit from the common good. That's one reason. And because it leads to social unrest. And it reminds me of a line. I feel so vindicated, man. I said this about Trump when Trump was talking about sending in the troops to go fix the cities. I said the libertarians and the individualists and the Chamber of Commerce Republicans, they're going to say, don't let that happen. Let New York City burn. Let Oakland burn. Let Chicago burn. Who cares about them? That's them. I'm going to be here in my nice red rural area. Say that's not the right attitude. Because one, it abandons major cities. These are my cities. These are American cities. We have a right to those cities to some degree. And it tells a lot of your countrymen who maybe don't have all the resources, the financial resources, the political resources. It tells them, hey, we're going to go live in our gated communities where we don't have to deal with crime, where we can send our kids to good schools. We don't have to deal with any of that stuff. We're going to be here. We're not telling you the code to our gates, but you guys fend for yourselves. And if your families die from fentanyl and gangster bullets, that's too bad. Fix it yourselves. And Trump comes in, he says, no, we're not going to be two nations like that. We're not going to be two nations of haves and have-nots. We're going to have one nation Trumpism. So one nation conservatism is a phrase from the British politician Benjamin Disraeli, who had another great observation. And this is the key to it all. This is a really practical key to it all. The palace is not safe when the cottage is not happy. The palace is not safe when the cottage is not happy. This is why you have to have a sense of community, a sense of belonging. You have to have care, emotional and spiritual care, and also some material care from the privileged classes, from the blessed classes, from the hardworking, fortunate classes, however you want to call them, to the people who haven't done quite as well for any multitude of reasons. You have to be wise about this. You don't want to create perverse incentives. You don't want to increase resentment among people against the wealthy. You need to have a political community. You need to be smart about that. There is a big delta. What did President Trump say? Yeah, there is a big gap. And you know me, I'm a popularist. How are elections decided in this country? Are they decided by the invisible hand of the free market? No, they're decided by votes. We have to take people seriously. Okay, speaking of religion, horrifying scene from Dearborn, Michigan. One that if this is aired, if this is seen by every voter in the country, Democrats are never going to win another election. For over a week, we've paused advertisements and any appeals for DailyWire memberships to focus on the only thing that matters in this moment, remembering and honoring the legacy of our friend Charlie Kirk. Yet, even without being asked, you showed up for us, watching, commenting, sharing, and supporting us by becoming DailyWire members. You reminded us once again why we are not alone in this fight and that we will not be silenced and that together we will keep building the future. Thank you for standing with us. You are what makes America great and inspires us to continue the work that we do every day. My favorite comment yesterday is from Satirical Siren. So I never thought I'd see an actual applicable give us Barabbas moment in my lifetime. I was wrong. I don't know exactly what this is in reference to. It might be in reference to Luigi Mangione when the judge in New York said that he was going to drop the top two charges against Luigi, and there was a crowd outside the courthouse, and they cheered. They were so happy. For Luigi Mangione, a cold-blooded murderer, a guy who murdered an executive in cold blood simply because he didn't like the executive's ideology, putative ideology. It's not even clear what the executive believed. Really, because of the murderer's ideology, which was one of resentment and envy. He didn't like that the executive had some money. But I guess it's my favorite comment because I'm surprised by that statement. I never thought we'd see a give us Barabbas moment in our lifetimes. We see them every day. I always expect the give us Barabbas moment. Give us Barabbas is what the crowd of Jews shouts to Pontius Pilate when Pilate offers, as a matter of clemency, to give the crowd either Jesus, an innocent man, or Barabbas, a political revolutionary and killer. And the crowd says, give us Barabbas. But of course, that's what all human beings do. It's not unique to antiquity. We do it in modernity. It's not unique to the Jews. Every peoples does it because the Jews are the type of human nature in the Old Testament. Barabbas means son of the Father. Jesus Christ is the son of the true son of the true Father, the God of all creation. And of course, the people want the false, carnal material, terrestrial sun, concerned with merely political temporal revolution, rather than the true Son of the true Father, whose revolution conquers death and gives us eternal life in the true kingdom, which is in heaven. People do that all the time. All the time. I would be much more surprised. I would be shocked if the crowd outside the courthouse lamented the injustice. That's just not how it works, especially in the political realm, which is governed by principalities and powers and spiritual wickedness in high places, especially when it comes down to envy and resentment, money and avarice, the chief vice of the cities. That's how it goes. That's how it goes this side of heaven. Okay, speaking of religion, in Dearborn, Michigan, which is now a Muslim town, in Dearborn, Michigan, the mayor and the council decided that they were going to name a street after a Hezbollah fighter. Now, Hezbollah is a terror organization that has attacked not merely our allies, but has attacked the United States. Hit U.S. Marines in Beirut. A Dearborn, Michigan resident, just a normal-looking white guy, shows up to the council and says that this doesn't seem like a really good idea. The mayor of Dearborn, Abdullah Hahmoud, says that resident is not welcome in Dearborn.
Hezbollah, bombed the embassy in Beirut, and including many Americans. So I just feel it's quite inappropriate.
You are an Islamophobe, and although you live here, I want you to know, as mayor, you are not welcome here. And the day you move out of the city will be the day that I launch a parade celebrating the fact that you moved out of the city, because you are not somebody who believes in coexistence.
You don't believe in coexistence. You don't believe in tolerance, which is why you need to leave this city. Because you object to Hezbollah. You object to honoring a man whose organization murdered Americans. And so you need to leave. I'm the mayor, and you need to leave. The nativism will increase. I said at the top of the show that the consequences will increase until behavior improves. I think the nativism is going to increase too. I think the recognition of America's fundamentally Christian identity is going to increase too. I think the demands for immigration restriction and deportations are going to increase too. I think Republican victories are going to increase too if that clip and others like it are played in the lead up to the midterm elections. People look at that. They look at that clip. And the inescapable conclusion, if your brain hasn't totally turned to mush, is, how did we get here? Hold on. Put ideology aside, put my vaunted principles aside. I'm just observing that political situation. A Muslim mayor of a town tries to rename a street after a terror organization that has murdered Americans. An ordinary American resident of the town shows up and objects, and the Muslim mayor says, if you don't support Hezbollah, you're not welcome here. Whatever we did to get to this point, we got to undo it. That's what any ordinary person would conclude. And so then they start thinking, well, what got us to this point? Mass migration, religious indifferentism that tells us that all religions are basically the same. This language of phobias that suggests that it's irrational to object to certain ideologies and heresies. The notion that religion has nothing to do with public life. I think the Muslim residents of Dearborn have just thrown that out. The notion that anyone can be an American just by virtue of coming here and maybe passing a test. All those things getting thrown out. The notion that diversity is our strength. Is Dearborn stronger today than it was 30 years ago? Who would conclude that? All of those things are going to be thrown out. I said this about the LGBT movement. Remember, I said, leading up to 2023, 2024 call-up, there was this steady advance of the LGBT movement, which reached its apotheosis in the transing of little kids, in castrating little kids, shortening their lives, giving them bone problems, pretending that little boys were little girls as young as elementary school. And I said, that's too far. That's gone too far. And it's on the campaign trail, Republicans ran on that and they won on that issue. I said, what the left is going to be desperate to do now is to stop the boomerang going in the other direction. Because that idea that led to transing the kids started with feminism in the 1970s, which said men and women are basically the same, which led to the LGBT movement, which said that men and women are basically the same, which led inevitably to redefining marriage, because men and women are basically the same. So why are two men any different than a man and a woman? Which led to the transgender ideology. If men and women are basically the same, then why can't a man be a woman? Which led to transing the kids, necessarily. Because if a man can really be a woman, if you can be born in the wrong body, then that would be true from the moment of your birth, and then little kids could be trans. You see, those ideas inevitably lead, under the weight of their own illogic, to that final point. And once you realize that the final conclusion is absurd, then you start going back in the other direction. And you say, wow, hold on, we've made a lot of errors along the way. We need to correct those. And it's very difficult to stop that momentum in the other direction, just as it was when it was advancing. The same thing is going to be true on immigration, on religious indifferentism, on American identity. You're seeing that play out. Play that clip. Every Republican, clip that out, play that in your district. Democrats won't have a chance. The same thing is going to be true when it comes to standards and the free marketplace of ideas and the terms of engagement in debate. They assassinated Charlie Kirk. They celebrated his murder. Something has gone wrong. And we need to take concrete actions very quickly to remedy the many errors that led to that moment. The many errors that they can't just dismiss, that they can't just brush under the rug, that they can't just say, well, it was just some kook, some lunatic. No. It was the American left, people who identify as very liberal, being 8 times as likely as people who are very conservative to celebrate the death of their political opponents. It was the outpouring of minimization and celebration of Charlie Kirk's assassination. It was the lies that were told on the networks that are licensed by the government. It was all of these things. It was the normie on Facebook. It was your cousin. It was your coworker who was happy that Charlie Kirk was killed for merely stating the things that all of you believe. That probably was stating a more moderate version of the things that many of you believe. That's a change. And that's created a reaction moving back in the opposite direction, which is very, very good. We need to keep that momentum going. I have much more to say because on this topic of immigration, oh, good grief, Jasmine Crockett, the new AOC, is now comparing ICE, immigration enforcement, to slave patrols, which is exactly the opposite of what they are. Anyway, we don't have time. We'll get to that. We will get to that tomorrow because now it's time for the Membrum Segmentum. Rest of the show continues now. You do not want to miss it, see you over there.